Hello and welcome to Paul Outdoors. I hope that you're well. Welcome back. When I use the word outdoors nowadays, in the context that we are all in lockdown, it feels almost like a dirty word. It does make me chuckle. But it's a beautiful day, and it really would be a crime not to be out today. I'm out exercising close to home. I'm on a 5-mile circular walk, loop walk, exercising mind, body and spirit. I'm sure you'll all know what I mean by that. And I haven't seen another soul thus far, not a sausage. Nobody. Halfway round I'm going to stop for a little break, refuel and share with you the details of the UK government coronavirus guidelines, which came into force or were released on the 23rd of March. Shouldn't say come into force because it's not legal, it's not law. What is legal and law is, or are, the coronavirus restrictions and regulations, which did come into force on the 26th of March 2020, shortly after. And although the detail relevant to England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland are similar across the board, there is a subtle difference that I've picked up or noticed with regard to Wales and restrictions on movement. So I want to compare and contrast the guidelines with the regulations being enforceable law, guidelines being best practice. This is what we'd like you to do, but not enforceable by law. There seems to be a lot of confusion around what people think they can and can't do. So hopefully we'll, rather than add to the confusion, we'll help sort of make things a little bit clearer in people's minds. I'm not a legal expert, please bear that in mind, so this isn't legal advice. Please look at the links to the various documents in the video description box below, the guidelines and then the regulations specific to either England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and have a look for yourself. There's a nuthatch in the oak tree above me, hammering away. Moments ago there was a green woodpecker shouting in another oak tree behind me, and there's a greater spotted woodpecker in another oak tree to my left. Marvellous. Well, anyway, I've reached the halfway point of my walk, and before I pack up and continue and make my way home, I just wanted to share with you the detail of the UK government coronavirus guidelines and compare and contrast those to the coronavirus regulations, which came into force on the 26th of March 2020 and are now legally enforceable by the police. So the regulations are law. There's a lot of confusion out there about what people can and can't do, particularly in respect to leaving the house for exercise. And having seen a lot of comments on YouTube videos recently where people have uploaded videos of them out and about and sitting in woodland, comments have said, you're breaking the law, you're breaking the rules, you're setting the wrong example. etc., etc. I can understand why there is confusion, particularly when you've got a set of guidelines out in the public domain and regulations. So what I would like to do is just briefly go through the detail of what the guidelines say in respect to restrictions on movement, and compare and contrast that with what the regulations, the coronavirus regulations, have to say about that. So the guidelines, i.e. best practice advice, we'd like you to do this, but not law, says this. So question, when am I allowed to leave the house? You can leave the house for one form of exercise a day, for example a run, walk or cycle, alone or with members of your household. There's another question, can I walk my dog / look after my horse? Yes, provided it is alone or with members of your household. So it doesn't mean that the horse has to be alone, it means that you either need to be alone when you do it, or you can be with members of your household. People must stay at home as much as possible to reduce the spread of the virus, but you can also still go outside once a day for a walk, run, cycle. When doing this, you must minimise the time you're out of your home and stay at least 2 meters away from anyone else that isn't from your household. So that's what the guideline says. So it does specify one form of exercise a day, so you can leave the house once to exercise, and you can also leave the house a second time to walk your dog, look after a horse, something of that nature. The regulations, and I've printed off the Health Protection Coronavirus Restrictions England Regulations 2020. So this is specific to England, but having looked at the regulations for Scotland and Northern Ireland, they are very similar, and they are in fact, as much as I can tell, and bear in mind I'm not a legal expert, I'm just reading from documents, they are the same when it comes to restrictions on movement. So what I'm going to do is just read to you what it says briefly about restrictions on movement from the English regulations. Restrictions on movement. Section 6. 1. During the emergency period, no person may leave the place where they are living without reasonable excuse. 2. For the purpose of paragraph 1, a reasonable excuse, please take notice of the language and the words used. A reasonable excuse includes the need A. to obtain basic necessities, including food and medical supplies. Sorry, I'm just surrounded by birdsong here, it's wonderful. To obtain basic necessities, including food and medical supplies for those in the same household, including any pets or animals in the household, or for vulnerable persons. And part 3 of Schedule 2, B, to take exercise either alone or with other members of their household. And it goes on to say that you can leave the house to attend a funeral and other reasonable excuses. So interestingly, the regulations for England say that you can take exercise either alone or with other members of their household. It doesn't specify how often per day you can leave the house, it doesn't specify the nature of the exercise, and it doesn't specify the duration of the exercise, whereas the guidelines says you can leave the house once. Now interestingly, in Wales, the Welsh regulations are different in respect to restrictions on movement, and it does specifically say that if you live in Wales, you can only leave the house once to exercise, once a day. You can only leave the house once a day to exercise. So it's important to make that distinction. But having printed off the regulations, I can understand why people are confused, because you tend to only hear about the guidelines. Very rarely do you hear anybody in the media mention the regulations. So I can understand the confusion amongst the general public, but I still can't really understand how the police are trying to enforce the guidelines rather than the letter of the law, the regulations. But like I said, I'm not a legal expert. I'll put the links for the guidelines in the video description box below, and the links to the regulations for England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, so you can go and have a look at them if you so wish. Well, I enjoyed my little break. Just met my first human being of the day, a lovely young lady who jogged on past, and we exchanged a hello and a smile. Carried on separate ways. Back in the orchard now, and have a look at the beehives, see how active they are. These orchards aren't in flower yet. Honey bees galore. Hives positioned to pollinate these orchards. I'm also looking forward to the arrival of the first swallows for the year. It's always a highlight for me, always mark it down on the calendar, and love to see and hear that first swallow overhead. So admire those birds, they come so far to grace us with their presence, and hopefully a pair or two will take up residence and nest in our porch this year. Fingers crossed. These orchards will be festooned in blossom in a month or so's time. They will really be a sight for sore eyes and a real treat for the senses. Amazing now, I'm on the other side of this orchard and there's not a breath of wind, whereas on the other side it wasn't gale force, but it was certainly quite brisk and chilly. This side, and with this large hedge on my right, is a real sun trap. Bees are buzzing, the birds are singing, everything's galvanising itself for renewal. It's magical, it really is. This one, Mark, Y Explorer, is for you, mate. A majestic oak. Say hello. What a beauty. And there are more as far as the eye can see. many as in days gone by. So we need to look after them, revere them. Oh, the stories they could no doubt tell. Less than half a mile now from home. I'm out of the orchards and in a big field now with a lovely hedgerow to my right that's sort of in between me and the orchard that I went out in and came back through. There's a heady aroma of early spring, freshness of spring, and silage in the air. Beautiful combination. So don't forget the links for the UK government coronavirus guidelines and the coronavirus regulations for England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland are in the video description box. Go and take a look. Section 6 in England specifically, restrictions on movement. Can't remember what the section numbers are in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. I'm sure you'll find them. And once again, thank you for tuning in and joining me. Hopefully it's been of interest.